That was the sound of Rachael. This little module here. Well, to be precise, that was not the sound of Rachael. That was the sound of my Deckard's Dream passing through Rachael and then onto a delay and a reverb effect. Now, what is Rachael? Well, Rachael is Black Corporation's reimagining, really. I think that's the best way to describe it. Reimagining of the famous Yamaha CS80's ring mod circuitry. Now, when Black Corporation decided to reimagine the whole CS80 and created the Deckard's Dream, they didn't include any of the effects, and that means they didn't include the ring mod. And to many people, the ring mod is a kind of an integral part of the CS80, certainly the CS80's sound capabilities. So here it is. It's in a little Eurorack module, which is an interesting choice. Maybe we'll see some more Eurorack modules from Black Corporation in the future. What I'm going to do in this video is talk about Rachael, what it does, what its capabilities are. Obviously, I'll play some sounds as to what it sounds like, and what are the options, the alternatives to using Rachael. That's what's coming up in this video. I think probably the best place to start is to talk about the CS80's ring mod circuit, because it's not just a ring mod, it's a little bit more than that. Now, I don't have a Yamaha CS80, unfortunately, to be able to demonstrate to you the ring mod. The closest thing I've got to it is Cherry Audio's very, very, very nice software simulation of the CS80 and GX1 combined, called GX80. So I'm going to show you that now and demonstrate to you the ring modulation circuit that is inside that software emulation. That's what's coming up next. Okay, so the first thing to really mention about the ring mod in a CS80 is that it's an end of audio chain global effect. So in theory, you could sort of emulate it with a ring mod effects pedal, for example, but not quite, and we'll get onto the reasons why in a second. But ring mods, I'm not going to go into all the detail of how ring mod works. You can check that out on Wikipedia and other resources if you want to. But there's two audio signals that get fed into a ring mod circuit. The first one is normally referred to as the audio signal input, and then we have a secondary one referred to sometimes as a reference signal. Now, this is an end of audio chain effect on the CS80, and it's the overall sound of the synth that is being input into the ring modulator as the audio signal input. So that means however you've created the patch in terms of the two ranks, the oscillators, noise sources, filter, envelope generators and everything else, the end result of all of that is getting fed into the ring modulator. So what is the reference signal? What is the second signal that is being used for ring modulation? Well, that is an LFO. It's a dedicated LFO inside the ring modulator. And you'll see here this little LED flashing away. We've got a speed control to determine the speed of the LFO, going really quite slow all the way up into audio rates. So let's have a listen to it. So at the moment, if I hold down a couple of notes, there's no ring mod going on. We've got this little control here for applying the depth. So let's add a little bit of ring mod. And you'll hear there at slow LFO rates, it's just a very nice tremolo effect, basically. And that's 100% modulation depth. That's as slow as it goes, not particularly slow, and this is how fast it goes. That's audio rate speeds, but it's not particularly fast, but it's enough to give some kind of like clangorous bell-like tones like this. Now, what's special about the ring mod in the CS80 is that it's not just a ring mod, it's a ring mod plus an envelope generator. You'll see here we've got attack time and decay time. So it's a very simple little two-stage envelope. And what this envelope is able to do is to modulate the speed of that LFO. So here we've got attack time and decay time set to in the middle somewhere. This is the depth control, which controls how much the envelope is affecting the speed of the LFO. I'll set the speed to be really quite slow, and as I introduce the envelope, you'll hear that it's speeding up the LFO and then slowing it down because of the attack and decay times that I've got going on here. So as I start to introduce it, a bit more, bit more. And this is maximum depth. So the big question when I first glanced at this ring modulator on a CS80 was, well, considering that it's an end of audio chain global effect, then how does that envelope generator get triggered? I mean, after all, the CS80 is a polysynth, so when I play the notes on the keyboard, which notes get chosen to affect that envelope generator and trigger it? Well, the answer is the first note that you hold down on the keyboard. Any subsequent notes that you hold down afterwards do not re-trigger the envelope. It's the first note that you hold down triggers the envelope, and then it's not until you've let go of all the notes and then started to play again will you get a second triggering of the envelope. So that's kind of how it works, and it allows you to do this kind of thing. So, how does Rachael stack up to the original CS80's ring mod circuitry? Well, it stacks up very well. It does everything that the CS80's ring mod did, but it does an awful lot more than that, I have to say. It goes way beyond what the CS80 can do. Let me give you a few examples. First of all, let's talk about the LFO. So we have an LFO on board here. But it's more than an LFO. It is a regular oscillator. It can go way up into audio rates. In fact, it can go beyond audio rates. It can go so high that I can't hear it anymore. A very, very wide range of frequencies. And it's got a choice of waveforms. It's not just got the sine wave that's on the CS80, but it's also got square wave and sawtooth as well. And you can use it as a regular oscillator. You've got access to its frequency. You can control the frequency through this 1 volt per octave input here. So you can use it just as a regular oscillator, or you can use it as a ring mod effect to create some interesting tonal variations as you play different keys on your keyboard. So that's the oscillator, and you can see how it's much more than what the CS80 provided. Let's talk about the envelope generator next. So on the CS80, the envelope generator is very, very simple, just an attack and decay portion. Here we've got a full ADSR, so we've got a lot more control over the modulation capabilities of the ring mod. You can still have ring mod modulation going on once you release the keys, because we've got a release portion here as well. And the envelope generator can not only control the speed of the LFO of the oscillator, but it can also control the depth of it as well. Now it's controlling the depth of the modulation effect that I find the most useful. I'm using that a lot. Now, I mean, ring mods, they can create all manner of different effects, from very, very subtle tremolos through to sort of like just clangy bell kind of sounds, through to sort of like really intense screaming atonal sounds as well. I tend to use the ring mod and Rachael here for very subtle kind of atmospheric ambient kind of sounds. That's just the kind of stuff that I like to use with it. But you've got that full control over the sound with a ring modulator. So we've got our fully fledged oscillator in here. We've got a fully fledged envelope generator in here. We've got a depth control, and we can use the envelope to control speed and depth of the ring mod. And that's just using the front panel controls here. But we've also got a whole bunch of CV inputs here. We can have full control over the envelope. We've got different CV inputs for the attack phase, decay, sustain, and release phase. I've not seen that before. So we've got full control over the envelope. We can provide our own, basically. We've got full control over the depth with a depth CV input here. And if we don't want to use the oscillator as the reference input to the ring mod, and we want to use some other signal, then we've got a reference input as well. So we've really got complete and utter flexibility with our ring mod capability here with Rachael that you just don't get with a CS80. So that's Rachael, and it's an incredibly convenient module. It is expensive, but remember, you do get in here an envelope generator, an oscillator, and a ring mod circuit with an awful lot of control over them. But if you don't want to use Rachael and you are into Eurorack and you've got some existing modules, then maybe you've got all that you need anyway. I'm just going to show you next a little sort of like walkthrough of me using my Behringer System 100 modules, which does include a ring mod circuit, to kind of recreate what Rachael can do. That's what's coming up next. Okay, so we get off to a really good start with Behringer's recreation of these Roland System 100 modules. We have the 150 module. It has a ring modulation circuit built into it, and it has an LFO built into it. And what's even better is that the LFO is normaled into the ring mod circuit, so we don't even have to patch it. So we've got two of the components of the whole ring mod circuit that we need, which is absolutely brilliant. Right, so what we do need to do is to add an envelope generator so that we can modulate the frequency of the LFO. Thankfully, the LFO has got a frequency CV input, so we just need an envelope generator CV to be able to pass into there. So we're going to need the 140 module. Unfortunately, it comes with a second envelope generator and another LFO that we don't need, but never mind. We'll use one of those envelope generators and pass the output from it into the frequency CV input of our LFO. However, now we have a slight problem, and the problem is that these two modules, the 140 and the 150, unlike most of the other modules in the System 100 range, are not exactly well endowed with attenuators. And what we're going to want to do is attenuate the amount of the envelope generator that actually is modulating the speed of the LFO. So in order to do that, we need an attenuator module, and there is no such thing as an attenuator module in the System 100 range. However, we do have VCA modules, because VCAs at the end of the day are just attenuators. So here we add the 130 module. It's got two VCAs in it, we only need one of them, and what we're going to do is pass in the output of one of our envelope generators into one of those VCAs, and then take the output from the VCA into our LFO's frequency CV input, and we can attenuate that signal using the initial gain on the VCA. So that's all great. Well, it's good, but it's not right. And the reason for that is that the CS80 and Rachael module as well has a wonderful feature, and it's so simple. It's just a modulation depth control. You can either have the input signal without any modulation at all, and you can gradually increase the amount of ring modulation to maximum. And it's such a simple little control, but it's actually not simple to implement. If, for example, we were to attenuate the amount of LFO going into the ring mod circuit and turn the LFO down, we wouldn't get that effect. We'd end up actually having no ring mod effect at all. I'll show you what I mean using Cherry Audio's voltage modular environment, which is a great way to kind of figure out how modules work and how you want to patch them in real life. So let's take a look. So here we have a voltage modular. I've got three modules you can see here. I've got a ring modulator module in the middle there. It's got the two audio inputs, and we can attenuate them. So that's really cool. We can see what's going on by attenuating them. Now, the audio signal that I'm going to use is not from a Deckard's Dream or anything like that. I'm just going to take a sawtooth from a regular oscillator and pass that in as one of the audio inputs. And then I've got here an LFO module. So I'm going to take the sine wave from that LFO and pass that in as the second input. So if I take the output and pass it out of voltage modular, we can hear what's going on. Just turn up my volume so I can hear what's going on. Right, so you can hear there that we are basically modulating that sawtooth with the sine wave, and as I speed up the LFO, we get the effect that we would expect. So let's try and turn down the amount of the LFO going into the ring mod and see what happens. As you'll see, the whole effect goes down to zero, and that's not what we want. We want to reduce the amount of modulation and still hear the original audio signal, the sawtooth. So what I believe we need to do is use, let me just turn that off for the time being. What I think we need to use is a crossfade module. And rather than pass the LFO directly into the ring mod, we need to pass the LFO into this crossfade module. Now, the crossfade module is just a very, very simple mixer. It takes two audio inputs and it allows you to crossfade between them. So reduce one of them while increasing the other one. So what I think we need to do here is pass the LFO into the crossfade module, and then I've got another module here which is a fixed voltage module. So it's just providing a range of positive or negative or zero voltages, and I'm going to take a plus 5 volts and pass that into the crossfade module. So if I turn this dial all the way to the left, we are just going to be passing out of the crossfade module the fixed voltage, and over on the other side, far right, we'll be passing out of the crossfade module our LFO, and obviously we can blend in between. So let's leave it at far right for the time being, and let's pass its output into our ring mod. So let's reconnect that output up again. So we're at the far right, we're just hearing the normal ring mod effect of the LFO. And listen to what happens as I turn this dial around. And back again. And that, to me, to my ears, is exactly the effect that you get with the CS80's ring modulation depth control. And that's what we'd need to patch in our Eurorack solution. Now, obviously, just take that off. Obviously, the System 100 modules don't have a crossfade module, so I'd either have to buy one specifically for this task, or try and kind of invent one using mixers and inverting voltages and coming up with something all rather harebrained. At which point I basically gave up at that point and thought, you know what I do need is Rachael. So you can see there's quite a lot of faffing around and patching going on to recreate what is going on in this one single little module, which is probably the main reason for wanting to look at it in the first place. It really is very, very convenient to have all of that capability just in one module. It really is. What other options are there? Well, I guess, you know, there's guitar effects pedals, you can get ring modulation effects pedals, but there's not that many to choose from, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that ring mod really is a very popular effect. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of reverbs and delays and distortion effects and phasers and choruses and tremolos, you name it. There are tons and tons of guitar effects pedals, but there's very, very few that do ring modulation. I happen to have probably the granddaddy of them all, the Bob Moog MF102 Mooga Fuga, don't know how to pronounce it, MF102. There are a few modern ring mods out there, but not that many. And then you're going to really need to be able to have an envelope generator built into them if you want to have that kind of CS80 effect, which is what I was really after, as well as the convenience of Rachael. Anyway, that's all I've got time for in this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. As always, until the next time, thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you.